2022 is the year of the squinty-eyed legend himself, Joey Logano. This 14th season on the NASCAR Cup Series Tour has continued to prove that he is truly a driver like no other. At Darlington, he could see right through the cute costume that William Byron was wearing. Joey Logano that day raced more like the brilliant Flame Warrior by giving his competitor a little love tap into turn 3. That day he gained a rival, but that pales in comparison to winning with a livery throwing back to his old go-kart that started it all. A few weeks later, Joey Logano conquered Darlington's flat sister track, Worldwide Technology Raceway. The inaugural race ace conquered a track he hadn't raced on since the Bush administration. Mission accomplished. Returning to the playoffs, he had a quiet first 2 rounds, just getting the points he needed to transfer, and that's about it. Nothing wrong with that, especially considering the chaotic nature of this season. And more so because at a test at Homestead Speedway for Team Penske that helped their intermediate program find some speed and find that edge they didn't have in the regular season, leading to Joey Logano aggressively pursuing Ross Chastain at Las Vegas to try to punch his ticket into the championship, officially passing him with 5 laps to go and never looking back. I'm telling you guys, whenever Joey Logano decides to quit this NASCAR thing and go for a more safer job, he has a good career waiting for him as a congressman in the House of Representatives. He knows how to win when it matters every 2 years during an election year. Joey Logano has officially never missed the NASCAR Cup Series championship in an even year. Interesting enough, he has never made the championship in an odd year. Joey Logano continued his even year successes, although this season has a bit of an asterisk. Statistically, this is his worst season in the NASCAR Cup Series since 2017. The season where he got a win encumbered and he did not even make the round of 16. He didn't even make the playoff fight in the first place. There's an argument to be made that Joey Logano doesn't deserve to be here, but rather a guy like Kyle Larson deserved it a lot more. But I mean, that's been a commonality for this 22 team. A lot of people thought they didn't deserve to make it in 2018. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., the big 3. Joey Logano had nothing on him. It was the big 3 and me. Me would end up going in there and doing what needed to be done to win that NASCAR Cup Series championship and upset those big 3 that dominated the season. And once again in 2022, Joey Logano is feeling 22. Performing late in the season is red for Paul Wolfe and this 22 team. Heck, if anything, in this season like no other, Joey Logano is potentially one of the favorites to win a second NASCAR Cup Series championship, achieve the active high of 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships along Kyle Busch, and solidify him as one of the better drivers in this era. So car number 20 has historically failed to make the NASCAR Cup Series championship 4, even with guys like Matt Kenseth and Eric Jones. A glass ceiling Christopher Bell and Adam Stevens looked to shatter in 2022. The great engineering reset known as the next generation car leveled the playing field to where they were closer to that JGR core. The big 3, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. that led the team to dominate in the late 2010s. Christopher Bell was now within reach. And I think the story of Christopher Bell's championship journey begins with the unthinkable start this team had, full of bad luck, spins, engine failures, flat tires, you name it. Whatever it was, this DWAL 20 did not get the finishes, and they were mired in a tough points position of 29th after 5 races. He could have easily went out and did what Denny Hamlin did, win one race, basically go for broke every single week and continue the inconsistencies. Instead, Christopher Bell developed a rhythm. He developed consistency to get out of the hole that he was in. Still, in an improbable next generation season, Christopher Bell had to win. He needed to rise to the occasion, rise like many Joe Gibbs racing drivers have had to do before him. This would begin a theme contrary to the JGR norm, as it wasn't Martin Truex Jr. capitalizing to win in New Hampshire. That was Christopher Bell. It wasn't Kyle Busch in the mix at Bristol and Kansas to look like a title favorite. That was Christopher Bell. It was not Denny Hamlin winning his way into the next few rounds. That was Christopher Bell. This right here is a 20 team that has been battle tested. They've been thrown to the wolves so many times in these playoffs. Having to overcome tire issues at Texas, Christopher Bell won his way into the round of 8, albeit thanks to chaos at the Charlotte Roval. Having to overcome, in the words of Killicar, having to take off on him like NASA when Bubba Wallace sent Kyle Larson into orbit, and that ultimately led him to collide with C. Bell at Las Vegas, put him well below the cut line. 2 weeks later, it was Christopher Bell dirt tracking it alongside the apron trying to get by Chase Briscoe. Ultimately, that would be the most clutch win of his career, the Martinsville Xfinity 500, to make it to the winner-take-all championship race. Christopher Bell is now the first driver in NASCAR history to make the championship four in all three divisions. He did so in trucks in 2016 and 2017, Xfinity in 2018 and 2019, and now the NASCAR Cup Series in 2022. The rise has been incredible from Christopher Bell, from a dirt track ace to NASCAR star in a little over 7 years. And I think the most important thing is that he has the experience of going into these pressure-packed races, whether it's the NASCAR Championship or whether it's the Chili Bowl. And also, he's going to have two-time NASCAR Cup Series champion Adam Stevens to lean on. A championship here would not only be a statement for Christopher Bell, winning it in just his third NASCAR Cup Series season, but also for Joe Gibbs Racing. On Sunday, they can prove to the NASCAR world, they can shock them by proving that they do not need Kyle Busch. The system is strong, and it will continue to get stronger with guys like Christopher Bell carrying the team into a new era. Ross Chastain, Alva, Florida, 7th-generation watermelon farmer, has faced a career of uncertainty. He didn't have the stacks of dough like guys before him have been able to use to buy the best equipment possible in this series. Instead, he had to grind it out with smaller teams, getting every ounce of that car to try to make his name. And even when he did get the cash from DC Solar, that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. He ultimately got a chance with Kaulig, but in 2020, that was a year where his career looked pretty bleak. Honestly, he underperformed expectations at Kaulig. Yeah, he was consistent, but Ross Chastain failed to win a race, and he didn't even make the championship four. When he had a bunch of Cup experience, he brought that level of knowledge to Xfinity and didn't do much with it. 1 year later, he would finally get his full-time chance in the NASCAR Cup Series with Chip Ganassi Racing, but with CGR now a part of Mr. Worldwide's plot for domination, Justin Marks had a tough decision to make. Choose the 2004 NASCAR Cup champion Kurt Busch with tons of experience, tons of knowledge about how to build as a race team and get the ball rolling, or a winless Ross Chastain. Marks would take a bold risk and believe in Ross Chastain and his talent, that he was a true wheelman behind the wheel, putting him in the Trackhouse #1 car for this 2022 season. Watermelon Man instantly made a first impression at the Pennzoil 400, a race that has statistically been dominated and or won by the eventual season champion. Saw Ross Chastain lead a race-high 83 laps and finish the race in third. That race, Phoenix and Atlanta, would be the events to build up Chastain as he would enter COTA and put it all on the line, aggressively bumping AJ Allmendinger out of the way to become a NASCAR Cup Series winner. Talladega would require less effort as Ross Chastain waited for the seas to part to nab win number 2. Believe it or not, that has been it for victories from the Melon Man this season, but regardless, in 2022, Ross Chastain has planted many seeds that have blossomed into memorable moments into NASCAR fans' minds. They know Ross Chastain this season. Some of that is not in a good way. As Dover, he put an aggressive block on Martin Truex Jr., and this would later cost MTJ a chance at the playoffs. He would end up 3 points behind Ryan Blaney. That move costed him 8. Gateway, he rattled Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott so much that the two rivals would tag team up on Ross Chastain to get him back. And after that race, I remember leaving the grandstands and Ross Chastain said, "I'm surprised that Justin Marks hired me." But even then, he didn't stop the blue collar getting everything out of the car that got him to this point in the first place, that got him to the situation where Justin Marks thought he was desirable as a NASCAR Cup Series driver. And what would take place at Martinsville would leave the entire motorsports world stunned silent. Ross Chastain, he pulled a move that you would think was only possible in a Disney movie like Cars or Herbie Fully Loaded. What was fantasy was now reality. Ross Chastain, 2 points below the cut line, transferred into the championship four and ultimately saved NASCAR from massive controversy, considering that because of the Brad Keselowski disqualification, he would have made up the 2 points on Denny Hamlin based on how Keselowski finished ahead of him in the stages. It is a moment that has changed Ross Chastain's life forever, not just the move itself and its mainstream publicity. The one team now has a melon full of momentum coming into Phoenix. Knowing they were down and out, but Ross Chastain was willing to do what no one has ever done to get here. That is a huge ton of confidence to pump into this Trackhouse team, the guys working on the cars, everyone at the shop. And that alone right there is a damn good reason to argue why Ross Chastain will be your new NASCAR Cup Series champion come Sunday. And I expect on Sunday they're going to have to delay the race to get him into the car, considering that he now has the balls the size of watermelons. Because that right there is the type of driver and the type of energy that is now injected into Ross Chastain's veins. Chase Elliott spent a majority of his championship defense playing the second fiddle in the background to new teammate Kyle Larson. Absolutely stunning, because this was supposed to be the passing of the torch. When Jimmy Johnson passed the torch to Chase Elliott, this was now his era at Hendrick Motorsports. This was his era in NASCAR. To have a guy just straight up dominate on your team, meanwhile you get the scraps, that is not something that you want to have happen. So Chase Elliott, Alan Gustafson, and this 9 team decided to study up on the next generation car, prepperize for the new season, while Kyle Larson, Cliff Daniels, and the 5 team were out celebrating, and in the case of Kyle Larson, ripping it up on the dirt scene. The spring for Chase Elliott can be categorized by 2 things. The consistency, mainly straying away from mechanical issues, crashes, and other bugs with the next generation car. All that preparation worked as that helped Chase Elliott pad up a solid cushion of points that would help him later win the 2022 regular season championship. But at the same time, the 9 team, they poorly executed in race winning situations. They had Martinsville, they had Phoenix, and they had Richmond where they were up front. Yet lackluster pit stops or just falling off late in the race costed them victories and had them winless heading into Miles the Monster Dover Speedway. It was fitting that he, of all drivers, was able to tame this beast as a consistent driver with a rock-solid core of guys behind him. Chase Elliott was heading back to the postseason for his 7th season in a row, but there were still some demons that needed to be shed, like Alan Gustafson consistently botching late race strategy. Nashville would see that 9 team overcome the Swiss Army knife thrown at them thanks to the Spire 77 blowing up to win a 2nd race on concrete in this season. Atlanta, he aggressively held Corey LaJoie at bay, and he would win a fan favorite affair at the Hampton Motor Speedway. At Pocono, Chase Elliott was flying his plane back home, trying to clear his head after a 3rd place finish, where he would find out some damning news. The fact that he was declared the legal winner of Pocono thanks to Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch both getting the big red dilly bars from NASCAR. And this would continue his streak of 4 consecutive finishes of 1st or 2nd. By this stage of the season, Chase Elliott had the most momentum in the entire NASCAR Cup Series. His final win on the season was Talladega, where it was yet another fan favorite affair. He would get his 5th win on the 2022 season to a loud applause from the grandstands. By all metrics of the imagination, this should be Chase Elliott's year, right? Unfortunately, something that hasn't been talked about is the fact that this team has fallen off a cliff in the postseason from their high marks they hit in the summer. Since the win at Pocono, Chase Elliott has just 4 top 10 finishes. Chase Elliott has kind of coasted to the championship based on getting stage points, playoff points, and getting 11th to 15th place finishes in the race. Not to mention he had a bit of luck go his way. If Denny Hamlin doesn't get a blizzard of penalties and disqualifications from NASCAR after Pocono, he outpoints Chase Elliott due to the playoff points gained from that race. If Hendrick Motorsports doesn't overturn the William Byron penalty, believe it or not, in the season where Chase Elliott was trying to get back on top in Hendrick Motorsports, it would be Kyle Larson with a chance to win Hendrick the driver's title and not Chase Elliott. But maybe this whole thing was just a ploy to focus on the Phoenix car. Chase Elliott did dominate the spring race. Keep that in mind. He was the guy to beat before another Chase won the race. Honestly, guys, the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series champion comes down to one major factor. Which Chase Elliott is going to show up on Sunday? Is it going to be the one that dominated the regular season, that had 4 straight top 2 finishes and won 5 races? Or is it going to be the pedestrian Chase Elliott, the playoff Chase Elliott, that runs sub-top 10 and does not have the speed and the execution late in these races? Either a second championship in 3 years or an off-season full of question marks lies ahead for Chase Elliott. Xfinity, Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, and Geico will present the Bill France Cup on Sunday to one and only one driver, the best of the best, the driver that outdrives the rest of the competition to cement himself as champion of the most chaotic season in NASCAR Cup Series history. So who gets to hoist the silver prize in 2022? As much as I want to pick Christopher Bell based on his execution in must-win situations, kind of the resiliency that this 20 team has built, nobody right now has the momentum remotely close to Ross Chastain. He has the drive to become champion, and this Trackhouse team, they want to solidify themselves badly as the next generation team in NASCAR, the team to beat. And coupling in what the one team was able to do in March at Phoenix, Ross Chastain will win his 3rd career race on Sunday, and with that, he will become the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series champion. So that'll do it, guys, for the 2022 NRF Productions regular season. I thank you guys for tuning in all throughout the season, but this thing is not over yet as we've got the full tank postseason coming up. So anyways, this is Nathan for NRF Productions signing out, and just remember, guys and gals, life's a beach and then you drive.